call the meeting to order. Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Jack W. Balch,
Present.
Mr. Kevin Hom,
Here.
Mr. Al Hueso,
Here. Approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. Do we have any communication?
There are no communications at this time.
Okay, Mr. Fayen.
Okay, so I just wanted to announce that the Board of Directors of Washington Hospital has appointed Craig Steckler informally at this point to be a committee member. He goes to the board in an open session in May, and he'll be formally appointed, and he will be a participating member from that day forward. He may come tonight. He had said he was interested in kind of viewing the goings-on, and we've started to orient him, sending him materials and things like that. Craig Steckler is the former chief of police for the city of Fremont. He was a trustee with the Washington Hospital Foundation for a number of years and is still a member of our foundation, and a longtime citizen of the city of Fremont. So we're happy to have him on the board.
Great. Bob, ready for reports?
Sure.
Please.
Oh, let me take one thing out of order. I'm sorry. We had said last time we would show you a quick film on what happens to a base isolated building. And we happen to have a video, it's only about a minute long. And it's of a hospital in near Sendai, Japan, where the 9.5 earthquake occurred about 2 years ago, two and a half, 3 years ago. And it is a base isolated building, and just so happened that we caught that there was some video that we found on YouTube that shows how the building kind of plays out. So I just thought you might be interested. You know, when we've described it, the building is actually swinging on the base isolators, and I think you'll get a sort of a sense for what that's like. So it's just quick, it's about a minute, but I just thought you might be interested to see what it looks like.
安住君テレビつけて
いや今球団の電源停電でパソコンも全然切れたんだよ。
パソコンは切れます。
はい2時50分。
So again, it was a 9.5. It was it was the closest hospital to Sendai, and it wasn't right in the town, but it was the closest one to it. And as you can see, They definitely are feeling the effects, but, you know, in terms of things staying intact so you could function afterwards. And the rest of the video just kind of goes on and shows them then responding to the influx of patients that happened post-COVID. So the whole place continued to function, and that's really the whole idea behind this. So I just thought, you know, that,
9.6.
yeah, it was 9.5, I think, 9.4, something like that.
Al, the majority of the movement and the shock is taken up in the isolators. The ground continues that violent motion, but with the isolators in the building gets very little of that action, if you will, because while the ground is moving like this, the building on top of the isolators is moving dramatically less than the ground beneath it. That's really the basis of the isolation. Is the ground's getting the 9.6, but the building's not.
Just a question, when it moves on those ball bearings, doesn't that produce some vertical lift, and does it create
Yes,
stress?
it does. It does produce vertical lift. That's 100% correct.
Does it cause sometime, I mean, is that entered into their basic design, or do you?
That's engineered that's engineered into it so that the building doesn't get any repercussion from that uplift.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah.
So I thought it's an interesting, so you get a feel for what do we have, what is the performance going to be like when we finish the building. Another kind of interesting thing, just real quickly, because we've had to deal with insurance, our insurance carriers on this. The actual base isolators get locked out during the first, I would say, 2/3 of the project, because they've got cranes and other thing up around the building, and so they can't have the building moving so if there is a quake, we have some exposure because they'll be locked out, and we have to take care of that in terms of our insurance program. But just sort of another interesting sort of sidelight of building here. Okay.
Once the steel is all in place, welded and all fitted up, then we have the opportunity to release the isolators and unlock them.
Okay, sorry for the, we took it a little bit out of.
Appreciate it,
okay.
thank you.
Then do we want to have any slides, or you just want me to go into, I can just go into a narrative scene? You've seen the building out there,
Yeah,
and,
yeah, let's go in those slides.
okay. Okay, and the parking structure, that has had a little bit of a late start compared to the notice to proceed for construction, which was the third week in November last year. The reason for the little retarded start is the city didn't release the permitted drawings till December 19th, a week before Christmas. So with having that impact of not having the permitted drawings to work to, we basically lost a few weeks over the holidays, and we really got our official start with construction, doing work out there in January 12th. Since then, the schedule is being maintained. They're on schedule with the construction, but we were impacted. Nobody's fault, but we were impacted by lack of the city issuing our permit and being over the holidays. So we have a late start, and so we're behind on our cash flow at that point because of the late start. But the construction, as the schedule is on schedule, and we do expect to finish on close to the original time frame. That's the good news. I don't have any bad news. That's the good news. And the vertical steel that you saw going up today in the forms, that wasn't supposed to start until about a month from now. So they've taken stuff out of sequence to try and maintain and catch up on the schedule itself physically. So they're taking positive action out there. No additional cost to the owner. It's all by the contractor. On the large job, or let me stop. Is there any questions? Okay. On the large job, They got a notice to proceed at the end of March, although we started the shoring operation prior to that to try and get a jump start on the schedule. So when we started in March, we'd already have some work in place. So we're basically on schedule. And the important thing is we will be setting steel right around the 1st of November. So, and at the pace we're going, we have a lot of confidence that we're going to be able to achieve that. So, and the cash flow in that will be maintained pretty much as the curve that we could probably go to the cash flow if we, we're pretty much on, yes, thank you. We're pretty much on schedule with the cash flow on the large job, and then on the garage, we'll be catching up with that probably within a few months. And unfortunately, the weather's on our side. But be it as it may, we're going to try and take advantage of that the best we can. And we've only had one lost rain day on the large job over the last two storms that we've had. We only lost one day. The garage lost 3 days because we were forming for concrete, and we had a lot of slough off in the form work and stuff because it was all neat cut on the form. So, but I think we're doing well out there, and I'm glad you gentlemen were able to take a tour today so you could see what's going on. And as a point of interest, the dirt trucks are loaded within 6 minutes. So there's a load going out off the job every 7 minutes. It's just unbelievable the amount of traffic that's on Bart Way that's coordinated. It's the contractors are working very well together because we're basically sharing out this whole site together with the trucks in operation. So I'm glad to be able to report that. Any questions on Jack? Yeah. Al?
No.
Kevin?
Yeah, I'm looking at since you mentioned weather, I look at your PERT chart here and it has weather contingency on one and then grace periods and weather allowances. Do you have an idea as to how many days that is?
Yeah. The on the garage, there's 20 grace days for the owner, 20 grace days for the contractor, and there's basically 33 weather calendar days on the garage.
So like 55, total of 55 days, is that what you would, do you add those two together?
No,
or is
there's
it-
actually one, you have 20 and 20 is 40 plus 33, that's 73 days on the garage.
Okay, so do you feel like then you said we've lost 3? Am I thinking about this the right way?
We lost 3 days over the last couple of weeks to rain, that's all.
Okay,
so 3 out of the 22.
3 out of the
It's applied to
22.
the 22.
Okay,
Yeah.
So as long as we stay under 22, that won't be an impact.
yeah.
We're not
I'm just
going-
kind of thinking about,
Oh, yeah.
how do I keep that number in my head?
We're not gonna hit 22.
No,
Yeah.
not with the garage, we should be in good shape.
Okay. Got it. Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Kevin, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll track it. So if you want, we can report that out on every time we meet.
Sure. We'd love to just kind of have that as a
Yeah,
note.
and then not every rain day is a delay day. What they have to do, so you know a little bit about this, and then I'll stop with this amount of detail, but within 24 hours, they have to notify us that they've had a weather day.
Okay.
And within that 24 hours, they then have to tell us if they've been impacted by that weather and justification for it. Because maybe one rain day may result in 3 days affecting the schedule. And maybe 3 rain days at a certain point have no effect on the schedule. So it's all analyzed by each event and all recorded, and so it becomes part of our documents.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I should report that on the next report from Ray, we did make we sent out what turned out to be preliminary reports to you that we updated. Ray was on vacation for about 2 weeks before this week, and then we had the golf tournament on Monday. So we were only able to go back and make sure everything ticked and tacked yesterday. So we did make a few changes. I just wanted to make you aware of that in his report.
Okay. Well, these, I'm sure look familiar by now. One caveat is that we're in very early stage, as Bob was saying, we're in very early stages on both projects, so I wouldn't give as much credence to the comparison of the schedule on the left and the cost on the right today as I would next month or the following month. As you see here on the garage, there, as we look at the percent time elapsed, shows as being 27%, and then the earnings would be just a very small amount, almost zero. And I think a lot of that, as Bob was saying, has to do with the fact that they initially were just getting mobilized and getting out of the ground. Being a concrete building, once they start pouring floors and walls, and it's going to move. The earnings are going to accelerate pretty rapidly because they'll be putting a lot of concrete on the site. So I'd be a little bit concerned about the difference in the 27 and the 0%, but I think we'll just keep a watch on what's happening going forward. And it seems like their work plan right now is to really move out with the construction over the next couple of months when we have good weather. There's been no change orders. We have in the construction contract a 5% construction change contingency. And we've used 24,000 of that to date. The total contingency is 462,000. So we've only used a very small amount of that construction contingency that's in the contract. It's already set up, so it's not an add to the contract. It's just a matter of using it or not. If, to the extent we don't use it, there's a shared savings between the hospital and the contractor on any unused amount, so the contractor has some incentive not to use it. That's pretty much the cost and schedule picture. Like I said, I think we'll get a better comparison between these in the next future months. Any questions on the garage? Move on to the Hyman Pavilion. Here we're looking at obviously much bigger numbers. The percentage lapse time is skewed here because you see the period ending was actually before was before the start date here. We're using a period ending date that coincides with a financial reporting cutoff date, so that we're really comparing the two together. And but at the same time, we tend to look at the current numbers. We can, pretty quickly calculate where we are in current numbers and make sure there's not a substantial difference between what it's showing here. But here, again, we're at a very early stage, and, the small amount of difference between elapsed time and earnings is not significant. There have really been no change orders on the project at this point. I wanted to mention, as far as the overall project cost, we've at this point we've bid out 3 bid packages, each of those having a number of contracts. I think there's probably 30-something contracts on the job in the 4 bid packages. And through bid pack 3, we were slightly over. We were about $7 million over budget. We went through I guess it was the 3rd round of value engineering, and we're able to cut that by about $4 million. Took about $4 million out of the job in value engineering. I'm thinking of the 3 rounds of value engineering we've been through now, we've, I believe, saved somewhere around $15 million over what the estimates were to start with. Anyway, we're still got a slight gap between our budget and the bids that have come in. We've got a few more bids coming in over the next few weeks. There's only about, I think, 30,000 of work, 30 million of work still outstanding on bids. And so the remaining, we have about a 4 million overrun at this point, which we would cover with some of our project contingencies if the bids don't come in below on the remaining work. So on a $246 million project to be at this point with a $4 million difference is pretty good, and we do have contingencies to cover that. So that's pretty much the picture, Jack.
This is the construction. Does this include A&E cost in it?
The P,
No, this does not, this number is not A&E.
There's no A&E. How did we end up with actual A&E costs compared to budget?
That's in Chris's report.
So that's
Still running under budget on that.
Okay.
yeah, Chris will be reporting on the various budget.
On the overall
line
project.
Categories in
Okay.
his report.
Yeah, this is just construction dollars.
Yeah. We're pretty much on line with the architect. We do have a different architect on this project, and we've been very pleased with their performance and doing a good job.
Okay. We go forward to Chris. Okay.
Okay.
So, we are very early in these projects, so not a whole lot of spending going on as of February 28th, although in March, things heated up significantly. So what you're going to be seeing in the current expenditures numbers will be increasing as we meet in the future. So basically, as of February, expenditures that had occurred since the last time we met was a little bit under $300,000. Mr. Balch, to get to your question on A&E on the garage, we're running according to schedule on A&E. We don't project any variances in that at this point. But in total, really the expenditures have been for pre-construction expenditures, preparation for the job. To date, we've spent about a little over $2 million on the garage out of a budget of 23. And of that $2 million, we've reimbursed about $1.871 million from GO bonds. Ed will move into the next slide. This is our project cost to completion estimate. It's so early in the job at this point. We're not projecting any budget variances that are meaningful at this point. So we're going to assume we're going to hit budget, and as the projects mature, we'll refine those numbers. Ed, take a look at the critical care pavilion, and like the garage, most of the expenditures up through February were on pre-construction activities. A&E on this job, again, running according to what we expected in the budget, and we don't foresee going over budget on A&E here at this point. Again, most of the spending being done on architecture, design, permits, and there's some general contractor expenditures there as they prepped for the job and went through the bidding processes with the subs. So in total, so far on the Hyman Pavilion, we've spent about $36.6 million out of the $346 million budget, and reimbursed about a little over $33 million from GO bond funds. So if there are no questions on those, I'll move into the funding. Okay. Let's take a look at the funding, Ed. So what I've done now is we're not going to look back on the power plant and that job. Once those jobs were completed, we had about a little over $165 million, almost $166 million in the bank and ready for use on these two projects. We've earned about interest of about $86,000 on it. As I said earlier, we've spent $2 million on the parking garage, $36.6 on phase 2. So as of the end of February, we had reimbursed ourselves out of those expenditures a total of almost a little under $35 million, leaving about almost $131 million to move forward. With the two projects, we still have $145.5 million of unissued general obligation bond funding that was approved by the voters.
We have some residual revenue bond money of about $2 million that was left over from the last project. We have Washington Hospital Healthcare Foundation pledges totaling almost $4.6 million. And we have $2.7 million of specific purpose funds that were actually set aside long time ago when our 1984 bonds were finally paid off. There was residual funds of $2.7 million, and at that time the board or of the Joint Powers Authority that oversaw that money designated that money for use of a new ER, and that was back in the late 80s. So that money has been sitting there waiting to be used and will be made available for this project. So we have total funding sources available for the job of 285, almost 0.7 million. We're estimating about $296 million in future expenditures, and the difference of $10.6 million will come out of hospital reserves. So are there any questions on the funding?
So I'm looking at the less total expenditures, parking garage, as of February 28, $2,011,559 is what was taken out. Is that right?
That's the total expenditures, right? But you see at the bottom of that section, there's the $3.6 million, which were expenditures that we did not reimburse with the bonds.
Okay.
So the net number that's been reimbursed with the bonds is the $34,989,000.
So my question is, how does that 2 million compare with project funding slide 1,871,000?
Which slide are you looking at?
2 slides earlier, parking garage project funding as of February 28.
Mm-hmm.
Total expenditures reimbursed with GO proceeds, total 1,871,000. Is that the same number, or is
You're
that?
looking at,
Go back to that other slide. There it is, your 2 million.
yeah, see the total expenditures of 2,011,559 in the second column.
That's one that carries across.
That's where that number comes from.
Okay, so I have to add, so there's a portion that 3,638,038 is what I have to add back. That's what reconciles between the.
Yeah, what the 3,008,638 is if you see the last column on this slide, the
Yeah.
1,871.
Yeah.
It's really the amount that hasn't been reimbursed, or excuse me, has been reimbursed with GO bonds. Excuse me, that's correct. The difference is what hasn't been reimbursed with GO bonds.
That's what I was trying to get straight in my head.
Yeah, this is a new schedule, and if it's confusing, I will refine it. So the difference is what hasn't been reimbursed.
I
And so
appreciate
there's
the
an
schedule,
amount
yeah.
that hasn't been.
Okay.
So maybe we need to point that out better in that slide so it's clear to you,
Yeah, in
Kevin.
this case, it's about, what, 190,000?
Yeah,
Yeah, I imagine it's going
Yeah.
to fluctuate over time,
yeah.
but I just like to.
It's the
tie
amount
one
that
number
we're
to the
funding
next.
out of our
Yeah.
own operations or
Got
that's
it.
in process to be reimbursed. So let me work on that slide. That's a new slide for us, and we'll try to make it more clear for you next time.
Okay, I think I understand it. So
Yeah.
really, I just have to look at the total expenditures and then tie that number out, and then that additional total expenditures not reimbursed with general
Yeah,
obligation bonds.
The
kinda gets spread out over
34,989
both.
is the sum of the two amounts that show in the total expenditures reimbursed with bond proceeds. And the difference that you see there is the amount not reimbursed. So we'll work on that to make it more clear.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you, Chris.
I apologize for the confusion there. It's
It's okay.
It's a new one, and it makes sense to us, but when somebody who hasn't seen it before sees it, yeah,
There is a number that
Yeah.
you showed at the very end
yeah.
of roughly 11 million.
Yeah,
And that's the amount that the hospital are gonna have to kick in
right,
from general funds.
Right.
Because it wouldn't have sufficient bond funds
right.
and previous funds to apply.
Right.
For the total cost of everything.
Yes,
That 11 million is made up of, well, let me go back. in the previous bond fund from the 1980s, I think you mentioned,
Yeah, the
there is a
2.7 million,
Okay, now you're realistically investing that money and earning
right?
on that, right?
Right.
So that's being contributed to the general fund.
No, the earnings on that
It has to be segregated
The-
because it is from a bond fund.
the earnings on those bond funds have always accrued to those bond funds.
So that's already built into that.
Yes.
So and are you projecting that 2.5 million, is that today's money or future money?
It is
That-
essentially at today's money, yes.
Okay,
The earnings on it will be negligible because it's been moved into low risk,
LAIF,
LAIF,
okay,
because you don't want to risk the principal at this point.
absolutely.
In the
No, I
project.
agree with that.
Yeah.
But in the long haul, the hospital's gonna have to come
There's
up
going to
with
be a delta, yes.
of about 11 or so.
Yeah,
That could change
yes.
depending on,
Depending on donations, depending on if we run into issues.
because it has pledges from the foundation
Yes.
as
yes,
well.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
So we're keeping track on that pretty closely. The donations are valued at net realizable value, the
Okay.
foundation funds.
So
So
that could-
we've already put in there a default level
Mm-hmm.
that's been estimated. So it's
okay.
there.
So that's somewhat soft at this time?
Yeah,
Okay.
and as the project matures and things develop in the job, and it could be less, could be significantly less if we finish early and don't dip into the contingencies. So
Is that a kind of a worst-case scenario? If I could-
that's a reasonable scenario. I wouldn't call it worst case.
Okay,
Yeah, because I don't know what the worst case will be. It's based on the project budget.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And if and when that, when will that be, what is the timeline for that to be realized? When is it over? When that has to be kicked in, whatever that amount is,
That would likely be in the last year of the project.
which will be in 2018?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that can happen.
Yeah, and we'll refine that number each time we meet. As things develop on the project, we'll update the numbers in the schedule.
Is the hospital and the trustees aware of that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. When the board approved the budget, we identified this as the
Because
amount.
that's a large number. That's a large
Mhm.
delta.
Yeah. Yep.
What's the, I'm sorry, one last question, what's the operating budget of the hospital? The entire hospital? right?
You mean the revenue?
The,
450 million net revenue.
oh, okay, never mind. Okay, sorry. I'm used to dealing with a 50 million budget in Newark, that's, okay.
No, it's a valid question, though.
No, they're very
It's
good
very
questions.
valid,
It's-
Because we want to know whether the project's at risk.
Exactly.
If we can't, we don't want to sit there with a shell empty,
Yeah,
all this money blown
yeah,
away.
but it's,
No, it's,
Yeah.
we've
But it's
we've
only-
gone into that number eyes wide open.
once you put it
Okay.
into perspective, it's, okay, I'm not having that cold sweat that I started at the beginning of the conversation.
No, it's
You
very
don't have
valid.
to cover the difference.
You and I are not gonna have to cut a
No, we
check.
don't have to cut a check.
Okay, thanks.
I do have one question now that we're getting to the end of this. On the last one, we paid, I think, about $750,000 for what I call the virtual build. I don't know what the actual proper terminology where we
3D
compute.
model.
For the 3D model?
3D. We did not do that on this hospital, or did we?
No, that is, it is not completed yet. It's just been started. It's
So
one.
you are
We
doing
are
this.
doing it, yes.
Okay.
And I don't remember the expense of it offhand.
And I don't need to know the expense.
Okay.
All I was wondering is, I remember that by doing that, we felt that we used less of a contingency because we could, even though it was expensive, the amount of money saved far exceeded the cost for the 3D modeling.
Yes.
And if we weren't doing that, I was just going to ask you if you felt the contingency was enough.
Yeah, no, that's actually one of the first questions I asked Ed when we started going down the road of this new job. So, yeah, we're doing the
And
modeling.
the reason it's not done ahead of time is the subcontractors are included in that.
Right,
So
that
as
you
they
need their-
bid and they come in.
Okay, that's all, because I
Yeah,
think
we-
that probably is.
We identified a lot of conflicts up front that really saved a lot of money on the last job, and we're doing
Yep.
it again.
Okay, thank you.
And I think we have the meeting times in the back for the next two meetings. I think, Mr. Wazel, you said you would not be here in July,
Let me look at the meeting times again. Yeah,
July 29.
July 29th. Unless I fly back from Europe. And it raises a question.
Yeah.
If there's someone absent, is it possible to have, to do a online meeting?
Online or
If
or
you need
phone?
me?
Yeah, we certainly have the capability of doing that.
Yeah, if you have a quorum, I don't really see the need for it.
Okay.
But if someone's missing, you know.
Okay.
Now, the time difference, we started this meeting at 6, that's 8 hours later.
You should just be coming back from the bar.
I'm glad you didn't say having dinner. Okay, but no, if we have that capability, that's good to know. Although it would be great to have 5 members,
Yeah, agreed.
okay? Yeah, but I won't be here on the 29th.
Okay.
Are we done?
I think we're done.
Wow, 6 o'clock.
Meeting adjourned.